Welcome to Infinite Universe with new story. For many years, the world watched the Owen family live their simple and beautiful life on a remote Yorkshire farm. Their lives felt like something out of a peaceful dream. People saw them raising their children, caring for animals, and handling the tough but rewarding work of farm life. Amanda and Clive Owen became well-known faces, not just as reality TV personalities, but as symbols of a wholesome rural lifestyle. Their show brought comfort to people who dreamed of escaping the noise of modern life. It was about nature, love, family, and hard work. But then, something changed. The show suddenly disappeared. No final goodbye, no explanation. Just silence. Fans of our Yorkshire farm were shocked when Channel 5 quietly ended the series. There was no announcement, no closure, nothing to explain what had happened. It was like the Owens had been erased from the screen overnight. The viewers, who had become emotionally attached to the family, were left with only questions. What happened? Why was the show cancelled? And most importantly, what had happened to Amanda and Clive? For a long time, there were no answers. Amanda and Clive went quiet. The farm that had once been full of life, laughter, and energy now seemed distant and cold. The world that had once welcomed viewers with open arms was suddenly closed. It wasn't just about the show ending, it felt like losing a family the world had grown to love. People noticed the silence. And in that silence, rumors started to spread. Whispers about Amanda and Clive's relationship started to rise. People wondered if the couple who once seemed perfect had finally hit a breaking point. The Owens had always looked strong. Amanda was known for her charisma, her warmth, and her sharp intelligence. She spoke with passion about farm life and motherhood, and people admired her for how she handled the challenges of rural living. Clive, on the other hand, was quieter. He wasn't as outgoing or loud, but his calm presence balanced Amanda's energy. He was a hard-working man who preferred staying in the background, focused on the farm and his duties. They seemed like a perfect match. But behind their strong image, something was going wrong. Living under the public eye isn't easy. Every move the family made was being watched. Every word they said was discussed by millions. And that constant pressure started to wear them down. Their marriage, once full of shared dreams and teamwork, began to feel the weight of public attention. It became harder and harder to keep up the image of happiness and stability. Their children, especially the eldest, Raven, started to notice the changes. The family that had once felt united now felt distant, and the emotional gaps between Amanda and Clive grew more obvious, even if they didn't say anything openly. Raven Owen, the eldest of the 9 children, had grown up in front of the cameras. When the show started, she was just a child. As the years passed, she took on more responsibility, helping care for her younger siblings and working on the farm. She saw things from a different perspective. While the cameras showed a beautiful picture of farm life, Raven saw what was happening behind the scenes. She saw her mother trying to keep everything together, smiling for the cameras while struggling inside. She saw her father becoming quieter, more tired, worn out by the effort it took to keep up with everything. Even though she was still young, Raven understood that her parents were not the same people they used to be. Amanda, once full of energy and purpose, seemed overwhelmed. Clive, who used to be her steady rock, seemed more withdrawn. Their home, once full of love and laughter, had grown quiet. Raven couldn't stop what was happening, but she felt every part of it. As her parents drifted apart, she tried to hold her siblings together. She became their protector, their big sister, and the one who carried the weight of change in silence. She poured her energy into her studies, choosing to study veterinary science. It was her way of staying close to the world she loved: the animals, the farm, the peacefulness of the countryside. But while she worked hard and kept moving forward, she couldn't ignore the sadness that surrounded her. The rumors kept growing. The public kept asking questions. Everyone wanted to know why Amanda and Clive had separated. Was there a scandal? Was someone else involved? Were they fighting behind closed doors? But there was no big drama. The truth, as Raven would later share, was quieter and more painful than any tabloid story. It wasn't about betrayal or anger. It was about time, pressure, and the quiet ways people drift apart. Amanda and Clive had spent so many years focusing on others, their children, their work, their show, that they had lost themselves. Amanda, in particular, had spent so long trying to be everything for everyone. She was the mother, the wife, the shepherdess, the TV star. But somewhere along the way, she forgot to be Amanda, the woman. Raven watched all of this happen. She didn't speak out at the time. The pain was too fresh, the truth too heavy. She stayed quiet, even when the media speculated and fans begged for answers. She didn't try to correct the rumors or defend her parents. She just kept moving forward, slowly building her own life. While Amanda stepped into a new role as a public speaker and influencer, and Clive stayed behind focusing on the farm and the children still at home, Raven quietly stayed in the background. Her social media posts were rare and carefully chosen moments of peace, photos of her studies, glimpses of family life that didn't give too much away. And then, after years of silence, Raven posted something unexpected. A simple black background with white text, "It's time to tell everything." There were no hashtags. No links. No dramatic headlines. It wasn't a scandal, it wasn't gossip, it was a moment of truth. She wasn't trying to create attention or cause drama. She was finally ready to share her story. Raven's story wasn't loud. It didn't involve shocking revelations or angry accusations. It was a story about quiet sadness, about watching something beautiful slowly fall apart. She shared that her parents' marriage didn't end because of cheating or hate. It ended because they had changed. Amanda had become someone who needed more space, more freedom. Clive wanted to stay grounded, close to the life he had always known. Those differences, once small, had become too large to ignore. There were no fights, no screaming matches. Just silence. They talked less. They smiled less. The connection that once held them together started to fade. Raven saw her mother become quieter, more tired, weighed down by all the responsibilities she had taken on. Amanda, once so full of life, seemed to lose herself. And Clive, always calm and strong, seemed more and more lost in his own thoughts. Amanda's decision to leave was not made lightly. It wasn't about hurting Clive. It was about saving herself. She needed to remember who she was outside of the roles she had played for so long. She needed air, space, and time to figure herself out again. Clive didn't try to stop her. He understood, even if it hurt. Their separation wasn't war, it was a quiet, mutual understanding that their time as a couple had come to an end. Raven understood this more than anyone. She didn't judge her parents. She saw how hard they had tried. She saw the love they still had for each other, even if it wasn't the same as before. They had shared something beautiful, but now it was time to let go. And that was okay. Painful, but okay. After the separation, life on the farm continued, but it wasn't the same. Amanda moved out, and Clive stayed behind with the younger children. The routines of farm life stayed the same: early mornings, caring for animals, surviving the cold, but the heart of the home had changed. The show was over, and with it, the image of the perfect rural family. But even though the cameras were gone, the real story was still happening. It was just more private now. Raven didn't rush to tell her side. She waited until she was ready. When she finally did speak, it wasn't to blame or complain. It was to bring peace. To let people know that sometimes things don't end with a bang. Sometimes they just fade. Sometimes people change, and that's okay. She shared her story with quiet strength, not because she wanted attention, but because it was time. Time to stop hiding. Time to let others know what really happened. Amanda and Clive were no longer together, but that didn't mean the love was gone. They still cared deeply for their children. They still respected each other. They were just walking different paths now. Amanda found new ways to express herself, to grow. Clive remained devoted to the life he loved, close to the land, raising the children and staying true to his roots. For Raven, telling the truth was healing. It helped her move forward. It helped her let go of the sadness she had carried for so long. And it helped others understand that even the strongest-looking families have their struggles. Even love can change. What matters is how you carry those changes. With honesty, with respect, and with love. Raven's story reminded the world that not everything has to be perfect. Not every family stays the same forever. But there is beauty in the truth, even when it's painful. And there is strength in speaking out, in owning your story, and in moving forward with grace. Her words, simple and quiet, carried more weight than any headline. She showed the world that healing takes time, that silence is not weakness, and that telling your story when you are ready is one of the bravest things you can do. Raven Owen may have stayed silent for years, but when she finally spoke, the world listened. Raven had always been observant. Even in the quiet moments, when no one was saying anything, she could feel what was really going on. She had seen the tiredness in her mother's eyes, the way Amanda moved through the days like someone carrying a heavy burden. It wasn't just physical exhaustion from working on the farm or raising 9 children. It was something deeper, an emotional and mental kind of exhaustion that came from years of pushing aside her own needs and pretending everything was fine. There was a kind of silent desperation in her, a quiet longing to find herself again, to remember who she used to be before she became the woman everyone else needed her to be. Raven could understand that now, even if she hadn't always known how to help. But just because she understood it didn't mean it was easy to accept. The cracks between her parents' relationship had been visible for a long time. They weren't always fighting, not in loud and obvious ways, but the distance between them had grown slowly, like a river carving through rock. It wasn't something that could be fixed overnight, or maybe even at all. Raven knew deep down that she couldn't repair what had broken between Amanda and Clive. All she could do was watch it happen, be present in those moments, and try her best to understand what it all meant. She had to accept that she was a witness to something that couldn't be undone. As time went on, Raven's perspective began to shift. She stopped seeing her mother as the woman on TV or the public figure that so many people recognized. She stopped seeing her only as the Yorkshire shepherdess or the mother from their beloved family show. She started to see Amanda simply as a woman, a person who had been trying to keep her head above water, trying to survive in a life that had slowly consumed her. Amanda had given so much for her family, for the image they had created together. And when the marriage ended, there was no dramatic collapse like people might have expected. There was no public outburst, no emotional breakdown for the cameras to capture. Amanda didn't fall apart in front of the world. Instead, she quietly began to rebuild herself, piece by piece. She moved out and started over somewhere new. It wasn't easy, but she found a new kind of independence, a new way of living outside the boundaries of the farm and the expectations that came with it. She began to write and speak, expressing herself in ways that didn't involve caring for sheep or being a mother on television. She started to connect with the world in ways that had nothing to do with her old life. She wasn't just Amanda the shepherdess anymore, she was Amanda, a woman with her own voice, her own dreams, her own pain, and her own story. But not everyone saw it that way. Some people were quick to judge her, calling her out for chasing fame or trying to stay relevant. They accused her of abandoning the life she once claimed to love. They said she was seeking attention, turning her back on the values she had stood for. To those outsiders, Amanda's transformation didn't look genuine. It looked like desperation, like someone trying too hard to hold onto the spotlight. But they didn't see what Raven saw. They didn't know the years Amanda had spent sacrificing her own identity for her family. They didn't know what it felt like to lose yourself in the roles other people assigned to you. Raven didn't always agree with every decision her mother made. There were moments when she felt confused or hurt. But as she got older and more emotionally aware, she started to understand the deeper reasons behind those choices. For the first time, she wasn't looking at Amanda as a perfect mother or some untouchable figure from TV. She was seeing her as a woman who had struggled, who had been lost, who had given everything she had and was finally trying to find her way back to herself. Amanda's rebuilding wasn't about getting attention or fame. It was about healing. It was about rediscovering joy, feeling peace, and finding a sense of wholeness that had been missing for so long. Raven could see that clearly, even if the rest of the world couldn't. She had watched her mother go through so many quiet changes, take so many small, brave steps toward self-discovery. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't perfect. But it was real, and it was important. Raven felt a quiet kind of admiration growing inside her. She realized how hard it is to let go of who people expect you to be and start becoming who you really are. Meanwhile, Clive Owen, Amanda's former husband and Raven's father, was dealing with the separation in his own way. Clive had never been one to share his feelings openly. He didn't talk much, especially not about emotions. In a world where so many people were eager to share their stories online, to give interviews and write posts about their lives, Clive stayed silent. Even as his marriage was falling apart and people around the country were speculating about what had gone wrong, he kept his pain to himself. He didn't talk to the media. He didn't defend or explain. He just stayed quiet. But Raven saw the silence differently. It wasn't a sign that he didn't care. It wasn't coldness or indifference. His silence was filled with sorrow, the kind that's too heavy to put into words. Raven could sense that her father was carrying around a deep grief, a sadness that never got the chance to be expressed out loud. Clive missed Amanda. He missed the life they had built together, the shared routines and purpose of running the farm side by side. He missed the comfort of their partnership, even if it hadn't been perfect. But Clive didn't know how to say any of that. The words didn't come, and over time, silence became the only thing he could manage. Instead of talking about his feelings, he threw himself into his work on the farm. He grew closer to Reuben, one of his sons, who became his right hand. Together, they continued the work that needed to be done, keeping the farm running and the animals cared for. Reuben became his companion in the silence, his anchor in the storm. Still, the connection between Clive and Raven wasn't the same. There wasn't anger or harsh words between them, but there was distance, a space that felt too wide to cross. It wasn't that they didn't love each other. It was just that sometimes grief creates a kind of invisible wall between people. A wall made of silence and things left unsaid. Raven saw it clearly now. Her father hadn't turned his back on her. He was just drowning in emotions he didn't know how to handle. He had been swallowed by sadness, not hardened by it. Eventually, Raven reached a point where she felt like she couldn't keep her feelings inside anymore. Keeping everything buried had only made things harder. She wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She wasn't trying to make headlines or cause drama. She just needed to speak her truth, to let go of the guilt and confusion that had built up over the years. It wasn't about blame. It was about release. When Raven shared her story, it was like a breath of fresh air after holding it in for too long. She wasn't trying to paint anyone as the villain. She was just telling the truth of what she had seen, felt, and experienced. Her words helped others understand what had really happened, not in a dramatic or sensational way, but in a real and human way. For so long, people had tried to guess what had gone wrong between Amanda and Clive. They imagined explosive fights or secret betrayals. But the reality was quieter and sadder. Their marriage didn't end in a blaze of anger. It faded slowly, like mist disappearing in the morning sun. It was made up of little things, unspoken needs, forgotten moments, emotional gaps that widened over time. By opening up, Raven helped both of her parents in a way they hadn't expected. Her honesty allowed them to see each other more clearly, to understand what had gone wrong without all the noise and confusion. Her words created a path toward healing, one that had been just out of reach for so long. It wasn't about taking sides or rewriting the past. It was about bringing light to something that had stayed in the shadows for too long. Raven's story was powerful not because it was perfect, but because it was real. She didn't try to make anyone look bad. She just told the truth. And sometimes, the truth is exactly what's needed most. Not to fix everything, but to finally see things clearly. To move forward, even if the path is uncertain. In the end, what Raven gave her family wasn't closure or forgiveness. It was understanding. And with that came the chance to truly heal. Sometimes we hold on to truths inside us, waiting for the right time to say them out loud. And when that time finally comes, the release can feel like freedom. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe our channel. Have a good day.